This is Kanzenshuu, the podcast, episode 426 for the week of June 25th, 2017. Hello, welcome back to Kanzenshuu, the podcast, an extension of the all-encompassing Dragon Ball fan site, Kanzenshuu. We cover anything and everything Dragon Ball in hopes of enlightening and a little bit of entertaining. Hello, great to be back once again. My name is Mike. Sometimes you may see me online as VegettoEX. Mike is cool too. This week on the show, we have a great topic for you, which I've already recorded, so I kind of want to get to it as soon as possible, but we do have a little bit of news recap that we're going to get to before the topic. Just as a little tease, this week on the show, our topic portion is myself and Jake. You may see him around as Herms from here at Kanzenshuu. We are talking about surnames, family names in Dragon Ball. As you'll hear me say during the topic portion, this is something that, of course, we've covered here and there over the course of the many years of our podcast and even longer on the website proper. I don't think we have ever dedicated an entire topic portion of our podcast to talking just about surnames in the series. So that's what we're doing this episode. That seemed like a great idea, and it was a wonderful conversation. I'm really excited for you to hear it. We go as in-depth as you can imagine we might do with something like this. So that's what you have on deck. I am staring at a volume of a little story called Journey to the West. I'm going to share a little excerpt from that little bonus material after the topic portion. So stay tuned for all of that. That's what's on deck this week. Before we get to that topic, why don't we do a little news recap here? We already had an announcement from Lacko Tower that they would be coming back, actually, for the next closing theme song to the Dragon Ball Super television series. This will be the 9th ending theme overall. They previously contributed Light Pink. That was the 3rd closing theme. Their new song, Haruka, Far Away. That's going to be the 9th closing theme to the series, and kind of bucking the trend a little bit. The song is going to debut in, yes, the TV series. It's not getting a CD single. It's actually going to debut as a part of their next complete album itself. It's also called Far Away, and the album is going to be coming out August 23rd this year. Most of the songs have received CD singles. The only exception prior to this would have been An Evil Angel and Righteous Devil by the band The Collectors. That too also debuted on that respective band's their full-length album, as opposed to garnering a CD single. And because I have people asking me this all the time, and rightfully so, we still do not have a CD single announcement for the second opening theme of the series, Limit Break Survivor by Kiyoshi Hikawa. We still have nothing about when this might be coming out. The only promotion in relation to the song is that it looks like he's going to be performing it live at Jump Festo, which will be taking place next month over there in Japan. Stay tuned. As soon as we know something about that song getting a CD single release, you will absolutely see it covered on the website. So you didn't miss anything. It's still, for some reason, does not have an actual CD single release. But Lacko Tower, their song hitting next month, actually probably next week in the TV series, and then their album with the song will be coming out in August this year. Let's jump over to video games briefly. Ultimate Mission X, I know I talked about the sales last time on the show. We now have sales up through its 8th week on sale in Japan. The reporting period of June 12th to June 18th kind of wrapped up the most recent round of numbers. That game is up to 167,050 total copies sold in Japan, according to the Media Create sales list. This is trending ahead of the first Ultimate Mission, definitely ahead of the second Ultimate Mission, and it's also a little bit ahead of Dragon Ball Fusions from last year. I honestly did not see this coming. I am very curious to see the long tail sales for this game, though. It's still getting a little bit of support over there in Japan. I think there's another update coming soon. Hopefully by the time this is up, maybe you'll see an update about that on the site. If not, I'm hoping in the next day or two. I have lots of news and translations with the other dudes to clean up for me. That's going to be coming to the homepage of the site soon. But Ultimate Mission X, yeah, it is trucking along in Japan. Other video game news, we got the tiniest little confirmation as of when this episode releases, the most recent issue of Weekly Shonen Jump in Japan. A single page splash for the upcoming Dragon Ball FighterZ, the new fighting game coming from Arc System Works. Lots of stuff we've already seen, no real new information, especially no information over in VJump. So if you're expecting something there, no. But this page in Weekly Shonen Jump, yeah, everything's that's wait, there's Trunks down there. Literally all it says is Trunks joins the battle. That's the only information about Trunks. We get a screenshot of him performing a special attack. There's Trunks down there in Super Saiyan and a little bit of splash text next to it. Trunks joins the battle. That's all we have right now. So fighter number 7 confirmed for Dragon Ball FighterZ. Lots of other video game news. Xenoverse 2, both the release that's already out there on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC, and then some news for the upcoming Switch port. I guess let's just quickly go over DLC Pack 4. That's going to be coming as you're listening to this within the next day, if you're listening to this episode on time. If not, it's already out, and maybe it's been out for a year or 5 or 10, because you can go back and listen to episodes that are 10 years old. That's only slightly frightening to me. Anyway, so DLC Pack 4, we got more playable characters. Merge Zamasu and Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan Vegito, or if you just want to call him Vegito Blue, that's fine too. New story, the Warrior of Hope arc. A new stage, the Ruined Future. A new parallel quest, special moves, costumes, super souls, and just like past updates, there's going to be a free update in conjunction with the paid one, where you're going to get some additional accessories and costume parts and that kind of stuff, and techniques and raid bosses, blah, 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 blah. You can check out some of the screenshots there on the homepage of the site. The DLC pack is out this week. And then the Switch port for Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. We knew this was coming. It's going to be coming in America as well. We don't have any real solid information on that. But VJump has updated the last couple months about the Switch port, and the official website for Xenoverse 2 has updated with some information about it. They have some pretty neat campaigns going on for the Switch port of the game. Those of you pre-ordering and purchasing the, I guess we would call it the day one edition over here in America, it's kind of like the first printing. A couple different bonuses, things like immediately unlocking 87 additional characters. That doesn't include paid downloadable content characters. That's just the other characters you would unlock. An unlock code for all of them right away, but also the entire story mode from the first Dragon Ball Xenoverse. It's not going to include Toki Toki City, the hub world, all that kind of stuff. It's just the raw missions themselves. And they even say that maybe things will be slightly different because obviously it's a new game. Importing those story missions over here, things might change just a little bit based on how the game has changed. But that's a look ahead at what's coming to the Switch port. That's going to be coming September 7th this year in Japan. So I guess look forward to international announcements. As opposed to previous Nintendo hardware, the Switch is actually region free, and you can set up multiple accounts very easily, kind of like it has been on Sony platforms for a while. Different region accounts to different stores. Of course, if you're going to import Xenoverse, you can pop it in and play it, no problem. The Japanese version of Xenoverse, of course, is Japanese only. That's not just voice cast, but in text as well. So if you want all those extras right now with the Japanese version in September, just be aware of that. Maybe you want to stay tuned for any international announcements. And then there's a couple little other more technical details that the Xenoverse 2 official website updated with. Stuff about resolution. In docked mode, it's going to run at a maximum of 900p, and in portable mode, it'll run at 720p. Some frame rate differences. When you're doing one-on-one battles, it's going to hit 60. Otherwise, stuff is going to run at 30 frames a second. Then different options for play styles. Obviously, the Joy-Cons, you can do some motion control stuff. They do specifically note that the Switch version does not come by default with any of the downloadable content. Just like the other ones, that will all be available separately. So this isn't quite one of those like complete Game of the Year Ultimate Editions. It's actually just a straight port of as it is available on other systems, just for the Switch, and with any of the benefits and or non-benefits that come with that, depending on what you're looking for. That's a little bit of news. We have some other stories coming to the site. We just haven't been able to wrap them up just yet. So stay tuned to the homepage of Kanzenshuu and more Dragon Ball news coming your way. So let's just get right into it. We have our topic right now, family names, surnames in the Dragon Ball franchise and beyond. With myself and Herms, here we go. Our topic this time around on the show, we are diving into the source material. I'm kind of surprised we haven't done this as a standalone topic. I'm sure we addressed it along the way in Ye Olden Manga Review of Awesomeness, kind of as it related to some other topics, but I think just a standalone, we're just going to talk about family names topic for our podcast. That makes sense. And joining me, it's Jake. It's the Herms. Hello, dude.
Hello.
Well, let's just get right into it. Family names in Dragon Ball. We start off in the series with a character named Son Goku. He has a family name, a surname. It's an adopted family name. We don't know what his real quote-unquote name is for quite some time, but so family names are pretty standard in the series, right? The main character has one.
Well, that's the only one, just about. And of course, the reason why he has this surname is because he's named after the Monkey King from Journey to the West, of course. And the reason why the Monkey King in Journey to the West has this name is because originally he's just a monkey. He has no name.
Well, he gives himself a couple names and then he gets more titles and more names. But this was actually a kind of like someone gave him a real name, sort of, kind of.
Yes, when he begins to study Taoism, he is given this name, the name Sun Wukong, the original Chinese pronunciation of Son Goku. Same characters, pronounced differently across different cultures, but anyway, he's given this name by his religious instructor, and so accordingly it has a religious meaning. The Goku part is just aware of the void, more or less, and then the Sun surname is just a joke because this is actually the character for grandchild.
Right.
But then when you break it down, it also incorporates the character for monkey, and so that's the joke. He's a monkey, and so his surname is based off the written character for monkey. Again, this is kind of like the Pope. Whenever the Pope becomes Pope, he's given a new Pope name. They don't just keep picking people named Francis for the sake of it. They're like, okay, you have to. That's the rules. You have to pick a name that was used by previous Pope, more or less. And so this is sort of the same thing, a new name in a religious context. And that's how it is in Journey to the West. And then Dragon Ball kind of follows that because Goku isn't his real name either. It's been given to him, like you said, by his adopted grandfather.
Stepping back just real quick and then we'll move on. What I love about the explanation in Journey to the West is that his instructor goes through that entire explanation and then more of what you just gave as well. Like he really details what, we took this stroke from this radical and we're changing it this way. And this means that, and this is funny because of this. I love Journey to the West that way. And it's just absolute scrutiny of every little detail.
And I guess one last thing though is that
okay.
This doesn't just come from this. In Goku's case, he's called that because of this Journey to the West connection, but this surname, it doesn't originate in Journey to the West. This is in fact a real surname, which is used to this day by many, many people in China and of Chinese descent. If you ever see someone with the family name Sun, S-U-N, then odds are it's going to be written in Chinese with the same character for Goku's name.
Well, let's move on. We have some information that kind of takes us from the beginning of the series to the last arc of the series. Is there anything in between that point that you think is worth hitting up along the way? Because I feel like the very last bit of context kind of answers everything from along the way.
Yeah, the thing, it's kind of the dog who didn't bark in the night kind of thing, where it's like the fact that there are no mentions of surnames between Goku introducing himself and then what we get in the Buu arc. Like there's, Yamcha shows up. He's never called anything other than Yamcha. Right. Same thing with most of the characters from the series. It just never comes up one way or the other, like whether or not these characters have any family names. And it stays that way until we get to Vidal's explanation in the Buu arc.
Well, I guess let's just get right into it. She basically says how she found out who Gohan is because he has a last name.
One bit of nitpick, so we say last name, which of course is because in
Sure.
Western world, the family name comes after. Most of Asia, it comes before. And then there's the whole issue where, like modern Japanese names, in Japanese, they're referred to with the family name first, but then when we're talking about the same person in English, generally it's customary to switch it around into Western order.
Right. We say Akira Toriyama and not Toriyama
Yeah,
Akira.
exactly. Although for whatever reason, this is only done for Japanese names, whereas, with Chinese or Korean names, it's not the same. We say Kim Jong-il rather than Jong-il Kim. And that's that's just a quirky thing about history. And then we don't do this for Japanese people from essentially from before the Meiji era.
Right. I was going to say, when there's like a certain historical cutoff period, not just for Japanese, but for a bunch of other cultures and other literature as well. I don't know what that cutoff is for all these different pieces of literature, but I feel like I've seen explanations of in prefaces for books. They'll be like, we're going to leave things in what you would call reverse order for this book because of blank.
Yeah, and in Japan's case, I'm pretty sure specifically it is the Meiji Revolution, because that's when they started to try to adapt to Western culture. And then, in China and Korea, I think, today, like I said, if it's in modern times, if we're talking about a Korean or Chinese person living in Korea or China, it stays in the Eastern order. But if it's like someone who's immigrated to America and they've, become naturalized, that's when it's put into the Western order. Like if someone of Korean descent and their family name is Kim, then letter B after their given name. Whereas, like I said, if we're talking about Kim Jong-il or that whole family, the Kim comes first.
All right, well, then let's jump to chapter 425 here, jumping from chapter 1 to 425. And then we're going to go back in and fill in some of the blanks here. What does Videl actually say to Gohan here?
Well, so she's cleverly unmasked him as the Great Saiyaman. Then she's explaining about how before her father, Mr. Satan, won the tournament, the Tenkaichi Budokai, the guy who won before him was some weirdo called Son Goku. And then she's like, oh, I see, it's the same family name as you, Gohan. And it's pretty weird in this day and age to have a family name separate from your given name. Based on this, she reasons that this Goku person must be Gohan's father, which of course is correct.
And that pretty much, in retrospect, explains everything about the series that we've heard. So let's start jumping back a little bit. We're going to jump back even pre-Dragon Ball now. Dr. Slump, pretty much all the characters have given names and family names, right?
Yeah, because we have Norimaki, so Senbei Norimaki, the main character, and then, of course, Arale, who's counted as part of his family, even though she's just a robot he made. And then
right, she takes on his name.
Yeah, and then, of course, there's Midori, who is, I can't remember her maiden name, but she eventually marries Yamabuki, Midori Yamabuki, right. And so she marries Senbei and becomes Midori Norimaki, and then all of the various characters throughout Dr. Slump likewise have family names. So there's like the Soramame brothers, Taro and Pisuke, and then Kimidori family for Akane.
There's the Sun family.
Yeah, from China. And so essentially, again, it's pretty much every character is given a family name, even if they're not called by it very often. So it's the same thing you'd see, like something like The Simpsons in America, where most of the characters have given full names, even if they're not called that most of the time.
So then the jump to Dragon Ball, what do you think changed? Was it just, this is too much to keep track of? I'm trying to give this a different kind of setting. What do you think Toriyama did here?
Yeah, I think the main thing was probably to just try and distinguish it from Dr. Slump off the bat, because he has said, that was one of the things he was trying to do is give this new series its own identity. And that's one of the reasons why he said he was trying to make Dragon Ball seem more Eastern, whereas Dr. Slump was Western, which is kind of interesting because Dr. Slump is actually technically set in Japan, even though that makes no sense whatsoever. But that's technically where it's supposed to be set, whereas Dragon Ball is set in this fantasy world. But, I mean, it's obviously very inspired by Chinese Journey to the West and other bits of that Chinese culture like that. So Goku's the one with the family name, which is directly inspired from Chinese culture. And then everyone else is just kind of left as is with these kind of gibberish names that are, as we know, are based on puns on various things.
Well, okay, so then are there any characters in Dragon Ball, and I'm sure some of it's going to delve into filler material here, are there any that we can concretely say, and obviously I have a list coming up where it's like, maybe so-and-so, but is there a concrete example of, yes, this person has a given name and a family name?
In concrete, there's, aside from, I mean, there's obviously the Dr. Slump characters who, when they make their cameo in Dragon Ball for a bit, although the fact that they have family names is not really addressed during the crossover. And then, of course, we have Jackie Chun, which is a fake name, so it's not his real name, but obviously it's based off Jackie Chan, which isn't Jackie Chan's real name either, but his stage name, which is set up to be like a given name and family name.
Right.
And then there's odd things like the boss of the Rabbit Gang, when he shows up, and this is actually only in the manga. I mean, this is something you can only see in the manga, where when Yamcha says who this guy is, he calls him To Ninjinka, and the way it's written in the manga, there's a space between the To, which means rabbit, and then the Ninjinka part, which means turn someone into carrots. But it's... I mean, the name has this very obvious meaning of, it's a rabbit turns people into carrots, but it's written out in the manga like his surname is To, the character for rabbit, and then space the rest of his name, which could just be a random fluke. But in the anime, I mean, not only can you not see how it's written in the anime, but Yamcha, it's read out loud. The To part is read out loud as Usagi, which also, it's just a different way of reading the same character for rabbit. But yeah, but it makes it seem less like it might be his given name if it's with that reading. It's kind of hard to explain without going into all this stuff about the Japanese writing system, but just trust me on this. And we actually get jumping around a bit. It's that same thing where because sometimes, so in Japanese, when they write out names, I mean, a lot of the times typically there's no spaces between words at all in written Japanese, but they do sometimes do that thing where if they're writing out somebody's name, like on a list or something, there'd be a little space between the surname and the rest of their name. And we see that again with Mo Keko from the very end of the manga, the tournament contestant who Pan beats up.
Okay, sure.
So interestingly enough, when his name is written down on the tournament bracket, there is that space, which would imply that the Mo is his surname. Of course, Mo, this name is a pun on just the phrase in Japanese, Mo Keko. It's like, oh, that's enough. I'm fine, thank you. But again, the joke is that they're treating it as if it were a person's full name.
That actually reminds me of DBZ Movie 9, the Money family. There's Gyo-san Money.
That's true. And isn't that, Money in that case is their family name, so it's...
Yeah, there's a couple different family members, and I feel like they are named. I only remember Gyo-san there.
Yeah, and his son is, it's from dollar, but just doll.
Yeah.
But in that case, they're, giving it in Western order, just even in the context of the Japanese series.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, when they speak it aloud, it is spoken aloud as Gyo-san Money, not Money Gyo-san.
Yeah. So it's interesting to think why they would do that, just to make him seem like more of an American or Western type person.
Yeah, just to really set him apart from everyone else. All right, so there are a couple little sprinkles of names, even in the manga. And
there's Barry Kahn.
Oh, Barry Kahn, yeah, I suppose. And that's another thing where it's very obviously this is not a pop star, a movie star. He's someone important, kind of taking from Western kind of media style.
Yeah, even right down to the fact that he has what would be almost a real person's name. I mean, Barry obviously is a real name, and then Kahn, I think, is a real name in someone.
Yeah, I can see it. Well, just real quick, in case people don't know, what is Barry Kahn actually a pun on?
Oh, from Barry, like an electric shaver, like a buzz clipper. Can't remember what the what you cut your hair with.
Buzzer, clipper, they're called that kind of thing. It's Barry Kahn, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's literally they just they elongate the vowels and then split it up to be like a first name and last name.
All right, well, let's continue jumping all over the place. So we jumped forward. We jumped all the way backward pre-Dragon Ball. We're going to jump post-Dragon Ball right now. Talk to me about the super exciting guide. The important thing we got here was the reveal of Mr. Satan's name as Mark, which, sure, all right, it's an anagram, rearranged Akuma, Maaku, but Toriyama does actually mention the whole family name thing in this explanation as well, right?
Yeah, because you might think, well, like in the manga, Videl says, oh, it's weird to have separate family names, and you might think, well, if her father is Mr. Satan, then...
Is he a guy something Satan?
Yeah, shouldn't Mr. imply that whatever comes after that is his surname? And I mean, the answer from Toriyama is that no. First off, in the Dragon Ball Forever guide, which came out for the Kanzenban release, in the name pun guide for that, Toriyama said that he thought Mr. Satan was probably just a ring name, but he didn't elaborate. And then, so a couple years later with the super exciting guide, he said not only, again, reaffirming this is a ring name and also his real name is Mark, and he added on the explanation that in the region where Mr. Satan and Videl live, it's unusual to have family names. Which doesn't quite match up with what Videl says in the series, because she says it's rare these days to have family names. Mm-hmm. So it's she makes it sound like a time thing rather than a location thing. Although maybe it's the same. Maybe where they live these days, it's rare to have family names, but in that same area, it used to be more common. It's not an insurmountable contradiction.
Sure. So Toriyama is basically doubling down on it, but then there are a couple little does this really make sense?
In Jocko, it's revealed eventually that what is the doctor's name in Jocko? Omori, isn't it?
Omori.
Yeah.
Omori, yeah.
When he is introduced to Tights, he says, oh, Tights, that's kind of a Western name, and of course she turns out to be, of course, Bulma's sister, and from West City, which is, as we know, in the western part of the world. But Jocko is set in East City, which is in the eastern part of the world. And so, which kind of, and then most of the characters in Jocko actually have family names, whereas Tights doesn't.
So let me try this. Jocko himself actually has a last name. It's not in the normal chapters itself. This was added as one of the in-between pages. All the characters got character profiles in the collected edition. So Jocko's full name is Jocko Tilempempi Boshi.
Anyway, so they have these special, the profiles for the characters, which list their full name, even if it's not otherwise given in the story. And then, of course, for Tights, it's only Tights, which rather strongly implies that she doesn't have a family name. Unless, I mean, you could argue maybe they're trying to keep it a secret until the amazing shock twist ending of Jocko.
All right, so let's jump to, we were just talking about this family, the Brief family. I feel like this is the most common source of confusion over family names. I feel like we've kind of already answered it, though. If we have Vidal saying surnames are rare these days in like this area of the world, and no one else is given a surname elsewhere in the series, and even if a character named Mr. Satan, Satan's not a family name, but Brief is probably his real name. Like, he's not going under a pen name or like a stage name to be a doctor. So wouldn't he be someone with the last name Brief?
Yeah, so I guess first off, we should say that this is in many ways a difference between the original Japanese version and the Funimation dub, because I'm pretty sure at many points in the Funimation dub, they do explicitly refer to Bulma as Bulma Briefs. Bulma's mother is Mrs. Briefs. So the English version from Funimation explicitly treats it as the family name that's shared by the whole family. And I think, doesn't Evolution do that?
Yep, she straight up says Bulma Briefs. And then my little bit of trivia there is in the original script, and this carried over to the junior novel, and I believe the PSP game, she is Bulma Enchanto, and then we have Chi-Chi McRoberts.
Which is the most brilliant name in history.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. So, but none of that. So all of that's only in the Funimation version, and none of that's in the Japanese version. Where, as we've kind of outlined, it's never do they say Bulma Briefs in Japanese. Never do they call Bulma's mother anything other than Bulma's mother. Much like Chrono's mother and all those JRPG family members who are only identified by their relationship to the protagonist.
Right.
Like even the Kanzenshuu and all these guidebooks, when they have an entry on Bulma's mother, it's just Bulma's mother, Bulma no Haha.
And I think the same thing with Vidal's mother, too. It's a separate entry. And that relates to, if you check out the rumor guide, one of the answers for is Pizza, Vidal's mother. No, because Pizza and Vidal's mother have separate entries here, but that's how they refer to them.
Vidal explicitly says her mother is dead.
Right, so clearly not the case. So we did have this one random separate thing that does straight up say Mr. and Mrs. Brief. There were two books for Battle of Gods. There was a guidebook that you could purchase, and then there was the attendee booklet you could buy in Japan at the theater. This is from the latter here. So it's a lot of stuff written in Japanese, and then kind of vertically alongside everything, romanizations or translations of things. And here it says Mr. and Mrs. Brief.
Yeah, and I mean, that's so the English translation they give, and then the Japanese is more just like you could translate the Japanese that way, but you could also translate it as just the brief husband and wife, which obviously sounds very awkward in English, but this is a formation that they use a lot in Japanese, like the Mario brothers, Mario Kyodai, which is just literally the brother. I mean, that's kind of the same in English, but okay, like Frieza. When Frieza and King Cold are referred to, a lot of the times they say Frieza Oyako, which is literally like Frieza parent and child. If you were translating this poorly, you could translate Frieza Oyaku as the Friezas and treat Frieza as a family name. Right,
the Friezas or the Frieza family.
Yeah, usually if it's Oyako, it would be preceded by a family name and would refer to like, oh, these are members of a family whose name's Oyaku, not Oyaku, whatever precedes Oyako. Or if it was a specific person's given name, that person would be the parent rather than the child. But of course, I guess because Frieza is so much more prominent a character than his father, this formulation has become kind of standard. Like you would kind of assume, if you saw that without any context, you'd think Frieza was the father of the other guy. But anyway, so what I'm getting at here is that there's no particular reason based on the Japanese phrase to assume that this is a family name that refers to both of these characters. You can even take even the English that they give could be taken as that meaning of where it's like they're just kind of giving the wife the husband's name, like you might say Mr. and Mrs. John Smith, which used to be a very common phrase, like applying the given name to the wife in a very kind of a stupid sexist thing, but it used to be very common.
Yeah, she doesn't even rank to get her name anywhere in there, like the guy name. And just real quick, so the Japanese here, it's Burifu Fusai?
Yeah, Husai, with the first character's husband and the second is wife. And so when you stick them together, it becomes a single word referring to husband and wife.
Again, it's one of those things that makes perfect sense written out in Japanese. And then when you bring it over here, what do you do with it?
We should stress that this is literally the only piece of evidence on the Japanese side of thing that gives any support to the notion that Briefs is their family name. So it may seem very nitpicky of us to be nitpicking it in this way, but it's like, it's this versus like, the rest of the series indicating that that's not the case. And in this right before Dr. Brief is introduced, in the Red Ribbon arc where Goku is going to West City for the first time and he's trying to track her down, and he goes to the policeman, and the policeman's like, what's the name of this friend you're looking for? And he says, oh, Bulma. And the policeman doesn't immediately say, like, well, what's the rest of her name? As you would in the real world.
Exactly. Like, what do you mean? Like, first, how am I supposed... It's like if you ask for someone, Mike or Jake. Who the hell are you talking about?
If I go to New Jersey and ask a policeman if he knows where Mike's house is, that's not going to end very well. And then the policeman, but in the wacky world of Dragon Ball, the policeman accepts this. He puts that in, and he actually finds, like, there's apparently, like, only 3 people named Bulma in this entire city, which I guess means it's a rare name, but he brings up that profile of the first Bulma, and it's, some completely different person. It's like, oh no, that's not it. Then he brings up the right Bulma. But both of these people on screen, you can see it just says Bulma, like without anything else, which again, it's like, seems like a pretty strong indication that they have no family name for it not to be, or it would have been referenced during this whole sequence. Or it might just be that Toriyama, like, after the fact, like, after he wrote that, he's like, none of that makes any sense, so I'll just say that in this world there are no family names. Like, that could have been the inspiration.
Sure.
Like, he gets to the Buu arc and he realizes he hasn't given a single character besides Goku a family name, so he's just like, screw it, I'm just gonna say there are none, and that's the end of it.
And that's the kind of stuff that I mean, this is more analysis rather than straight up information, but that's the kind of stuff I love about Toriyama, where he'll notice something and say, no, that was meant to be that way the entire time. I love that stuff. So Dr. Brief, I guess we could say the same thing about all the doctors. Dr. Gero, Dr. Raichi,
Dr. Mew,
Dr. Mew, Dr. Frapp. They're all just these people have a name, and then I guess they become doctors at some point. They're called Dr. Blank.
I mean, if Yamcha became a doctor, they'd have to call him Dr. Yamcha.
Dr. Yamcha.
It's not like they're going to give him a brand new family name just because he completed his doctorate. I mean, I guess that could be their culture, but there's no indication it is. I mean, it's kind of, people just kind of get tripped, understandably, they get tripped up by trying to apply real world logic to this kind of fantasy series where that kind of thing doesn't necessarily apply. But yeah, because in the real world, if someone's doctor something, then whatever comes after doctor is going to be their family name. But in this world where people don't have family names, then you have to obviously just call them doctor and then whatever their single name is.
We're going to move on, but I do want to insert that if any fan artists want to take up the challenge, I would love to see some Dr. Yamcha art. We will lovingly retweet everything we get in response.
And we also, in Super, during that great movie thing, we had the Great Saiyaman movie thing. They had Bulma refer to herself as Dr. Bulma Hakase, which is even the same word, Brief Hakase, Bulma Hakase, which there's really no other, unless she's just being very eccentric. There's no other way to take that than that's her only name.
Right. So they definitely ran with it right there. That is it. All right. Well, let's move on to some of these up in the air questions about some of the other names. I have 2. Maybe you have some others. Tao Pai Pai.
Yeah, which is another one of these quasi-Chinese names where he's, so Tao is peach and then Pai Pai is just white. So it kind of fits the color theme of the Red Ribbon arc a bit, but it's like he's called Tao Pai Pai a lot. In the Japanese version, most of the time he's called by his full name, but then occasionally they do refer to him as simply Tao, usually by his students. Or even there's a weird instance where I think it's Tenshinhan refers to him as Pai Pai. Which is kind of, so there's that weird, it indicates that there apparently is some kind of split between those two parts of his name.
Sure. Which
kind of imply that one of those is his family name.
Yeah, I feel like if everyone and we're going to get to Tenshinhan momentarily, if everyone called him Tao Pai Pai and then occasionally Tao, I feel like that would be just like a shortening of it but the fact that Tenshinhan actually says Pai Pai, that really feels like, something's different here.
And the other thing is that Pai Pai is also Japanese slang for breasts, which is another additional joke going on here.
Sure.
But the odd thing about Tenshinhan specifically saying Pai Pai is that if we assume that this is a pseudo-Chinese name, then presumably it would be in the Chinese order, which means that Tao should be his surname, which means it would in that case be unusual for Tenshinhan to address him by his given name, like, his...
Sure. Like when other characters refer to Goku as Son, which is really just Tenshinhan and maybe Piccolo sometimes.
But yeah, it would be odd for Tin Shin Han. It would be disrespectful in traditional culture for Tin Shin Han to be addressing one of his martial arts masters and the brother of his primary martial arts master by his given name, which implies familiarity. So maybe Pai Pai is actually his family name, but that's kind of weird. I mean, none of this contradicts the idea that that he has a family name and a given name. It's just odd. It's an odd character detail for Tin Shin Han personally to be using Pai Pai. But, and then so on a related note, this is something I've recently found out, is that there was a hoax. So apparently there are, in the Japanese fan community, they also do April Fool's jokes occasionally.
Yeah, of course.
But they did this thing where they introduced, like they said, oh, here, we've just found these secret Toriyama drawings of this aborted character he's going to use. But then it got cut out, it got rejected by the editor at the last moment. And anyway, so it was Tao Pai Pai's daughter, who I think the name was Tao Lin Lin or something. But the point is that his Tao Pai Pai's daughter was presented as having a name that began with Tao.
Okay, so they went with, okay.
And I mean, it's completely fake, it's a fake fan thing. It has no actual authority, but it does indicate that those Japanese fans, at least, interpreted Tao as his family name.
All right, well, tell me about Tin Shin Han. I guess we have to bring the Funimation dub in here a little bit. I do want to back up. I don't think a lot of people realize that the split in the name dates back before Funimation brought things in-house. In the original syndication broadcast of Dragon Ball Z from 96 to 98, in the Cyan arc, when that first broadcast, it's the scene where Bulma picks up the photo and is looking at everyone. And the noticeable thing, I think, for all of us now is that Lunch is in the photo, and she doesn't say Lunch's name in the dub because Lunch was kind of eradicated for quite a long period of time there. But out of nowhere, she says Tien Shin Han. Up until that point, and moving onward for quite a few years, he was always just renamed Tien. And we've done a whole episode about Chinese names in Dragon Ball. We'll not get into that entirely here. But the Tien Shin Han break dates actually back to 96, 97. Funimation continued with that when they went back to do their original dub of the original Dragon Ball TV series. When they got back to the arc when he was introduced, they kept it as the Tien Shinhan arc. But separate from Funimation's dub, Ten Shinhan to me just sounds like a straight up full name.
It's so most of the characters, like with Tao Pai Pai, most of the characters just call him by his full name. I mean, you have Chaozu who calls him Tensan most of the time, which could be it's like that could just be shortening the name due to familiarity. Yeah. Although the San like kind of cuts against that because it's more of a formal way to refer to someone. But in addition to that, you have the tournament announcer who typically refers to him as Ten Senshu, which is the contestant 10. Right. Which, right. If he's doing that, then that would imply, he's not familiar. He doesn't know him personally. So if he's splitting his name up like that, it would imply that he's splitting it up based on family name rather than just shortening the contestant's name because he can't be bothered to say the whole thing.
Right. So in this scenario, his given name would be Shinhan and his family name would be Ten.
Yeah, mostly if we assume that it follows the standard Chinese order. And we also get, in the anime, but not the manga, when he uses his four-body technique, he refers to it as a Ten Ryu technique. So Ten, the character for heaven, which is used to write the Ten in his name. Ryu is style. So he's saying that, this is the style, the Ten style technique, kind of like a martial arts school kind of thing as well.
Yeah, we'll get like the Kame Ryu, or is it Kame Sen Ryu?
Yeah, Kame Sen Ryu. So like the turtle hermit style. Yeah. And just replacing, usually it's Kame Sen Nin for person, but they replace person with Ryu style.
Got it. Yeah.
Anyway, so, so it's in that same vein, it's like, this is my style. And to name his style, he's using that first character in his name, which implies more than anything that it would be his family name. It could even be implied, if you want to bring in the extra Daizenshuu backstory of, he's descended from the three-eyed clan. They say the reason he can split into people and grow arms is because of he's descended from the three-eyed clan. So maybe that is the family name of the three-eyed clan is Ten, but that's getting very speculative. And then, so in this recent Super episode with Ten Shinhan running his dojo, again, he has, it's the Ten Dojo, like he puts it on, he uses that as the name, and which leads to a lot of fun in the Crunchyroll subtitle, the official subtitles on Crunchyroll and Daisuki, where when the people refer to the character Ten Shin Han, the subtitles say Tien, but when they refer to the name of the school, which is named after him, they call it Ten. Like, they keep it to the Japanese pronunciation. Yeah, so getting into the whole crazy Chinese versus Japanese pronunciation of the same characters.
Well, I mean, that also just gets back to the Funimation. We made decisions at one point in time, and we didn't realize certain things, like when they had King Kai, but then they said Ko Ken, not kind of somehow missing the point and the fact that these were related.
But yeah, so anyway, long story short, he's using that as his personal seal, basically. Like his brand name.
Ten Shin Han's name. Is he one of the characters? Maybe even more so than Tao Pai Pai. Do you think we can say that his name would be given name Shin Han, family name 10?
I mean, again, it's like we're almost, like we have a lot of things that point that way, but it's like there's no quite smoking gun evidence. Like maybe if he and Lunch finally settle down and have kids and
name a kid
10 Lunch or whatever, like maybe that would prove it. But yeah, it's like, I mean, I don't split his name up when writing it, but I mean, obviously a lot of that is force of habit, but sure. It's not at the point yet where I feel like I don't feel like the only correct way to write his name is by splitting it up. But at the same time, I do think there's nothing overly wrong with Funimation splitting it up that way, even though the reasons they're doing that is for due to their complicated history of adapting the name.
And just dipping back to pre-Funimation fandom, when I would look through older things, I saw plenty of people who would split up Ten Shin Han's name into 3 different characters, but that may have just been, well, I know these 3 kanji, and I'm going to split them up as their own individual words. So, I don't know, there's been precedent for everything in fandom over the years. So, Tao Pai Pai, Ten Shin Han, is there anyone else worth bringing into the mix here? I mean, we already talked about the doctors. They're probably out.
I mean, there's people who like have names that seem to kind of split up, but like Dal Taki in GT, but it's like, it's almost like his name, it just seems easier to write it in English that way rather than there's any reason to think it splits that way in Japanese. I mean,
Sure.
There's a Shu Saiaku from that pre-Garlic Jr. filler, or post-Garlic, where it's like Chi-Chi brings in this tutor for Gohan who's the worst person ever, and so his name, Saiaku, means worst, and he's even given Shu, which is like kind of another one of those random real surnames that they inserted.
Yeah.
And he's even in the Funimation dub, they call him Mr. Shu, which in this case is completely valid.
That reminds me of one of the only localizations that I actually think was fucking brilliant was DBZ Movie 9. Going back to Kyo-san Money, they localized it as XS Cash. I thought that was awesome. Someone was on point in Movie 9. I don't necessarily agree with Koku, but I see why they did what they did there. But anyway.
There's a weird thing with Vegeta. Some people are... It's a completely baseless rumor that his family name is, I guess, Tabure or something like that, which is apparently just based on the idea, vegetable, Vegeta Tabur or some.
Then we actually got Tarble, so no.
It's just a thing that was in a fan fiction, and then people thought it was in the main series.
Thought it was neat and clever.
Yeah, it just took off. I mean...
Yeah.
Maybe getting back to Mr. Satan a bit, Toriyama's explanation on exactly who does or doesn't have family names, it's a little inconsistent, like we said, where it's like, is it based on region or is it based on time? But despite all that, he emphatically states in the Super Exciting Guide that Mr. Satan's name is just Mark and that he does not have a family name. So again, when we see people say Hercule Satan or Mark Satan, like both of those go against what Toriyama says, which is that he's only Mark and nothing else. And bring it back to the thing of like, it seems weird for someone to be named Dr. Briefs and for that not to be his family name. It does seem counterintuitive from the perspective of us English speakers to have someone called Mr. Satan and have Satan not be their family name. But then when you consider, like, this is from the original Japanese audience, this is them using the English word Mr. From our perspective, it seems like, it's just a normal part of the language. But from their perspective, it's kind of this weird foreign thing.
That actually isn't that entirely weird. Now that I think about it, some of my coworkers that have very young kids, and when they come in, I'm not Mr. Labrie to them. I'm actually Mr. Mike to them because there's a familiarity with these people that I work with on a daily basis. And it seems weird for these like 5-year-olds to call me Mr. Labrie because I'm not like that authoritative to them. I'm more familiar to the family. Like I know these people on a very close basis. So I'm Mr. Mike to them. It just feels like that to me.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing is that, like, from our perspective, if they're from an English speaker's perspective, if you saw a cartoon and there was like a wrestler and he called himself Senor Diablo, then even without being told, you could kind of just assume, well, this is a stage name,
Sure,
and the fact that he says Senor, it's just part of the stage naminess. It's just like a foreign affection kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of same thing with for a Japanese show to have someone called Mr. Satan using the English word Mr. It's kind of it's trying to be kind of special and fancy.
All right, well, Jake, Mr. Popo.
Yeah, like Mr. Popo, who also has no, as far as we know, has no other name besides Popo.
I'm just waiting for the deep Popo lore at some point.
Yeah, but it's like, it's marking him as kind of an unusual person.
Yeah.
Like that he says Mr. And, Popo, of course, is, as far, Toriyama has explicitly said, it has no pun, it's just gibberish. He liked how it sounds. In the Japanese language, there's not very many words that start with a P sound. Most of them are adapted from foreign words that begin with P, so there aren't many native. If there's a P, it'll be in the middle of a word, but not at the start of a word. And so you see that there's like a lot of these terms throughout Dragon Ball that aren't puns and are just gibberish. They often start with P. So Popo, Porunga for the dragon, Potara, the planet where they have the frogs have poop that's the same color as Goku's uniform, planet Popol or something like that. And I mean, there's Pui Pui, which is from Magic Word, but it's a magic word that's just gibberish. It's like, again, there's this theme of P being used for gibberish words. And so
the gibberish is based in prior gibberish. Yeah,
so it's like, so when Mr. Popo comes up, it's like someone being named Mr. Zoink or something from an English perspective, And I should also point out that I think it was K17 who made this observation, but that Mr. Popo and Lady Gaga have essentially the same taste in names.
I see. I get it.
And it seemed funnier when he said it, but...
I'm laughing on the inside, Jake.
Okay.
I feel like we've covered so much here. This is one of those topics I can't believe we haven't spent the 45 minutes doing this before. I'm super glad that we got a chance to do it now. Do you have any final thoughts you want to toss out there as we wrap it up?
We could get into whether like Pon or Chi-Chi whether they adopt the Son surname, which as far as we see, they don't. Although I think there's like random Cardass cards that say Son Chi-Chi, or I might be making this up.
And the mailbox says Son on it.
But it's like getting back to the end of the manga where it's Mo, the tournament, and they're writing out everyone's name, and it's like, Mo Keiko and Son Goten, because he's in the tournament, but Pon is just Pon, which, I mean, they literally just, for the tournament, write down whatever name you give them, even if you make it up on the spot, so that doesn't prove anything, but if nothing else, it seems that Pon doesn't self-identify as Son Pon.
I mean, we can probably see Gohan married Videl, who is part of this trendy movement of not having surnames, and it's not Goku's child. I feel like it makes sense that Pon would not take on the Son family name.
Yeah, so I guess that's about it.
All right, well, that brings our topic to a close. Jake, thank you much.
Sure, no problem.
All right, and I guess we're going to wrap up the show now. After wrapping up that recording, I thought, man, it would be pretty cool to share something that Jake and I talked a little bit about during the episode, and that's where Goku gets his name from. Not just the obvious, which we already talked about, quite frankly, the name Wukong from Journey to the West. Yeah, obviously he gets it from there. But what about that actual scenario itself from Journey to the West? We briefly touched on it. Wouldn't it be cool to just hear it? Well, let's get into it right now. So I'm going to share a little bit, an excerpt from Anthony C. Yu's translation of Journey to the West, which is my favorite one. This is his original translation. I know there has been an updated edition put out in print since I picked this up many years ago. I haven't checked that out, so I would like to check that out at some point. So this is actually from the very end of the first chapter of Journey to the West. Jake and I talked about it a little bit just to kind of set up the context. The Monkey King is now seeking tutelage under his first real master. And so this master is asking him a little bit of his background. Where does he come from? And so the Monkey King is describing where he came from and how he got to be where he is right now. So I'm going to start reading directly from this chapter here. And the portion I'm going to start with actually starts out with a pun. Let me explain the pun for you. So I'm going to say the word sing. And my Chinese pronunciation, don't go by my Chinese pronunciation. That's not good. I know. I have no idea what I'm doing there. But sing, S-H-I-N-G. This is a straight up Dragon Ball style pun. As Yu notes in his appendix here, a pun on the words surname and temper, both of which are pronounced sing. So The patriarch says, "If you have come on a long journey in many stages, I'll let that pass. What is your sing?" The Monkey King again replied, "I have no sing. If a man rebukes me, I am not offended. If he hits me, I am not angered. In fact, I simply repay him with a ceremonial greeting, and that's all. My whole life's without ill temper." "I'm not speaking of your temper," the patriarch said. "I'm asking after the name of your parents." "I have no parents either," said the Monkey King. The patriarch said, "If you have no parents, you must have been born from a tree." "Not from a tree," said the Monkey King, "but from a rock. I recall that there used to be an immortal stone on the Flower Fruit Mountain. I was born the year the stone split open." When the patriarch heard this, he was secretly pleased and said, "Well, evidently you have been created by heaven and earth. Get up and show me how you walk." Snapping erect, the Monkey King scurried around a couple of times. The patriarch laughed and said, "Though your features are not the most attractive, you do resemble a monkey that feeds on pine seeds. This gives me the idea of deriving your surname from your appearance. I intended to call you by the name Hu. Now, when the accompanying animal radical is dropped from this word, what's left is a compound made up of two characters, ku and yue. Ku means aged and yue means female, but an aged female cannot reproduce. Therefore, it is better to give you the surname of Sun. When the accompanying animal radical is dropped from this word, we have the compound of tsu and si. Tsu means a boy and si means a baby, so that the name exactly accords with the doctrine of the baby. So, your surname will be Sun. When the Monkey King heard this, he was filled with delight. "Splendid, splendid," he cried, kowtowing. "At last I know my surname. May the master be even more gracious? Since I have received the surname, let me be given also a personal name, so that it may facilitate your calling and commanding me." The patriarch said, "Within my tradition are 12 characters, which have been used to name the pupils according to their divisions. You are one who belongs to the 10th generation." "Which 12 characters are they?" asked the Monkey King. The patriarch said, "They are wide, great, wise, intelligence, true, conforming, nature, see, sharp, wake to, complete, and awakening. Your rank falls precisely on the word wake to. You will hence be given the religious name Wake to Vacuity." "All right." "Splendid, splendid," said the Monkey King, laughing. "Henceforth I shall be called Sun Wukong." All right, so again, ignore my pronunciation for any Chinese that was in there. That was actually the very end of the first chapter of Journey to the West, again from the Anthony C. Yu translation, available in print and digitally if you are interested in checking it out. That is going to bring our episode here to a close. Had a lovely time chatting with Jake and chatting in your ears. www.kanzenshuu.com. That is Kanzenshuu. You can find us there on the website, on the social medias, on all the places you would expect to find us. We are probably there, so join us. Once again, for Jake, thank you, and also for Julian and for Heath, I have been Mike Vegito EX. This was episode 426 of our podcast. We will see you next time for 427. Wherever you're up to right now, have a great rest of the day. We will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.